Former Chicago Bear legend Mitch Trubisky. We thought he was going to get paid. We talked about this last week. The value market, the high end market for Mitch Trubisky was going to be about $10 million a year. Well, it ended up being slightly under that. Pittsburgh Steelers nabbed apparently the heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger with Mitch Trubisky. Pittsburgh Steelers have signed Mitch Trubisky to a 2-year, $14.25 million deal worth up to $27 million with incentives per NFL Network. Pro Bowler in 2018 was drafted by the Bears in the first round of the 2017 draft. Trubisky presents a formidable challenge to Mason Rudolph in the upcoming battle to be Big Ben's successor. I don't believe that's going to be that formidable. It's Mason Rudolph. He's likely going to be the starter unless something catastrophic happens. Andrew, what do we think of this move? Is he/can he be the long-term answer that the Pittsburgh Steelers need?
I mean, I don't really know where else. We know where else they could have went, but I mean, I guess they see something, like he was a second overall pick and everything like that. Obviously, him and Nagy were not the best of friends and everything like that. And didn't they make the playoffs though? Didn't they make the playoffs his rookie year or something like that? I think they did.
They made the playoffs in 2018 and 2020.
With this man under center.
Yeah, he actually played an instrumental role, especially in the 2020 season. He was the difference at the end of the day.
So they're getting that a great contract and everything. I think when they look at him, they think that the talent is probably there and everything. They think Tomlin might be able to coach him up, and I mean it is the Steelers have they've only had like 4 quarterbacks ever or something like that. I say that jokingly because it seems like the Steelers never really move on from anybody because every time they have a guy, it's like that's the guy for like 20 years.
I mean, yeah, that whole thing of like, oh, the Steelers have only had like 4 quarterbacks. Okay, yeah, so like long-term starters, but you also got to remember they had like they always had 4 quarterbacks on the roster because Big Ben was always going to get hurt for a few games.
Right.
So they always had an extra few QBs laying around. Like Charlie Batch got some starts in there. Dennis Dixon back in the day got some starts for the Steelers. I mean, Mason Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, he did a thing.
But I mean, in all honesty, I do like this. I do like this pickup for them. I'm looking at that contract, dude. It's kind of like it's a low risk, high reward. Like especially for a former number 2 overall pick, it's a low risk, high reward. I don't know if the second year is guaranteed. I think the first year might be guaranteed. I don't know if it's a fully guaranteed contract. So it's a very low risk, high reward. And, they're still going to have a draft pick. They could swing on a guy like Kenny Pickett, like the quarterbacks coming out of this draft and everything. He could sit behind Trubisky for a year and everything, learn the system and everything like that. And let's say Trubisky does pop and everything. Like, we could have a Tannehill situation. We could have a Tannehill situation where, bring in a guy not expected to really do much. Next thing you know, they're in the playoffs. Just catches lightning in a bottle, and then he's your long-term guy. We could have a situation like this with Trubisky. So I do like the move, though. It's a very low-risk, high-reward type move for the Steelers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, we have someone in the chat saying that no way Mitch is going to be the starter. It's his job to lose. Like, honestly, if we're being honest, it's his job to lose. Mitch Trubisky proved in Chicago. I know there's a lot of people who like to hate on Mitch Trubisky, and like I got caught up in that a little bit too. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, but when you look back at it, or even when I was like analyzing it, like during a show one day, I was like literally doing analysis on this, and I was like, wait a minute. Trubisky, when Trubisky plays, they tend to win. When Nick Foles plays, they tend to lose. Why is that? The problem was never necessarily Mitch Trubisky. Yes, he had a ceiling. Like, here's the thing about Mitch Trubisky that I think gets twisted in all this. He had a ceiling, and he should never have been drafted as high as he was. He will always be known as the guy who was picked before Deshaun Watson, before Patrick Mahomes. That is going to be his legacy. That is also going to be the legacy of Pace, Nagy, and the crew over there in Chicago. But, that doesn't mean inherently that Mitch Trubisky is a bad quarterback. That doesn't necessarily mean that Mitch Trubisky can't play in the NFL. That doesn't mean Mitch Trubisky can't start in the NFL. It just means he's He's a decent quarterback. He's a slightly above average quarterback. That's what Mitch Trubisky is.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, and given his track record and everything like that, he's kind of like along the lines of like Daniel Jones is another one, dude. It's like should not have been drafted as high as he was, but he was and everything. And this guy has had a lot more success than Daniel Jones has had. And I mean, the Giants organization is a crapshoot, let's be honest, especially the last couple of years. But I mean, let's not sit here and act like, he doesn't have guys around him. He's got weapons. Like Daniel Jones has had weapons around him outside of an O-line. He has weapons around him. That defense was one of the most formidable defenses in the entire NFL last year. Saquon can't stay healthy. But even then, that run, they're really not, their offense is not predicated on the run game, especially since their O-line really doesn't exist. So let's not sit here and act like this guy is a complete scrub. Like, yes, obviously he was drafted higher than he should have been, and that will forever be his legacy with guys that get drafted higher than they should have been. But let's not sit here and act like he didn't have any success. Guy made the playoffs twice, and he was instrumental in that second time that they made the playoffs and everything. So, like I said, very low risk, high reward type player. They could still draft a quarterback. They could have a three-way race between him, Mason Rudolph, and whoever they draft and everything like that. Though I do think Trubisky should be the starter, just given his track record. And we will end up seeing what happens. Whether it's his job to lose, right? Whether he ends up losing the job, whether he ends up keeping the job. Listen, when we traded for Tannehill, we never thought Ryan Tannehill would ever see the field. Lo and behold, that same year made the change. AFC Championship. We've won the division every year since then. Do I think he deserved that contract? The jury's still out on that because this is the make or break year for him. But we could have a situation like that with Trubisky, which at the end of the day, listen, if he gets them back to the playoffs, because they did make the playoffs, so they really shouldn't have made the playoffs if Fangio was not.
That one year, they should not have made. There was that one year they backed into the playoffs at 8-8. They lost their last game and made the playoffs.
And then this past year, dude, I mean, I'm sorry. If Fangio decides to not try to fuck over a division rival, let's be honest, the Steelers don't make the playoffs this year. So if he can get them back into the playoffs, at least competing in that division, the AFC North, and at least competing at a decent level, now that we've seen, obviously, that the Ravens will be back, obviously, to see the progression of the Bengals and everything, the step that they're going to take, whether it's going to be forward or backward or whether they're going to remain stagnant. So if Trubisky can just keep them afloat, and can get them at least into that wild card spot, not saying win the division, but at least get them, have them be a wild card team, then, it was the low risk. You took a low risk on a player at that contract and you made the playoffs with that guy, especially with a rebuilding roster and everything like that.
Hey everyone, we hope you liked this video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Until next time, keep it real.